So probably my favorite, I don't know if I can say my favorite. I have like 10 favorite foods from Japan. Takoyaki is something that is extremely popular and famous in Osaka. And it's essentially fried octopus balls. Is kind of the way I describe it. But it's like a pancake batter with little pieces of octopus chopped up and put inside. They have a pan that has a bunch of little circles, and you put it into that pan and you let it fry, and then you flip it so it becomes like a little ball of basically like pancake mix with a bunch of little pieces of octopus inside. So sometimes you'll kind of see like a tentacle sticking out. But then you put on top of that a mayonnaise sauce, and then also like a darker I don't know what kind of sauce, like a molasses-based type sauce, along with some little tiny flecks of like seaweed or something like that. And it's an incredibly good meal. It probably doesn't sound super good to you, but as soon as you try it, you'll fall in love with it. I can almost guarantee it. Something that's very similar to that is Okonomiyaki, which is basically the same idea, same concept, but it's a cabbage pancake with those sauces on top. Also with like fish flakes on top too. So because it's really, really hot and there's those fish flakes and they're long and they're thin, sometimes you can kind of see them like moving back and forth. And so it looks like your food is moving, which is kind of cool. But it's pretty amazing. Like it's an incredible food. Usually inside the cabbage and the, like, I guess you could say basically pancake mix, there's usually also like meat or some sort of seafood or cheese, something like that. And then you have the mayonnaise and the kind of molasses-based sauce, like that dark sauce, and then some of those fish flakes, some of the seaweed on top, and it becomes a killer meal. Ramen is something that's super, super huge in Japan, and it's something that will be completely different from probably anything you've ever had in America. If you think of ramen in America, you're going to think of, well, that's what college students eat all the time. And in Japan, they don't have just noodles. It's usually noodles plus like meat and plus like they'll have green peppers, or they'll have a piece of like ham, or they'll have things that I don't actually know what they are, but they taste really good. I don't know, they're maybe like some sort of tofu, maybe? It's kind of pink, it has a little white thing on it. I don't know what it is, but it tastes really good. And there's different flavors. There's like a miso flavor, which is a famous kind of soup in Japan. There's a shoyu flavor, a soy sauce flavor. There's a tonkotsu flavor, which is basically they take pork bones and they boil them down for a couple days, and then they take that like broth and they'll put that in your ramen. It's amazing, absolutely just incredible. That's another one of the things that Kyoto is famous for, is their tonkotsu ramen. There's tonkatsu and katsudon, which is basically like a breaded pork cutlet. And the tonkatsu is going to be a bowl of rice with that breaded pork cutlet. And then on top of that, there's like a sweet sauce that you put on top, like a barbecue sauce almost. And then there's also the katsudon, which is kind of the same idea, where there's like a bowl of rice and then the pork cutlet, deep fried pork cutlet, and then there's like an egg sauce that you put on top of it. And it's pretty amazing as well. Yakiniku is a big favorite with missionaries. You, as a missionary in Japan, ordinarily you don't really buy meat. You don't really have a ton of money to go and buy meat because it's pretty expensive. But when you go to a yakiniku place, that's all they really have is meat. And so you'll sit down, there's like a little table, and then in the middle there's a burner. And so the server will come over and like light the burner, and you'll tell them, hey, I want to get some beef. And they'll bring you a plate of beef, and you throw down the beef on the burner, and it just cooks. And then you pull it out, you dip it in some soy sauce or whatever sauce that they have, and you eat it. And it's usually all you can eat. So it's like a time limit, all you can eat. That's how Japan does all you can eat. It's like you have an hour and a half, like ready, set, go. And so as a missionary, you use that to the fullest of your abilities, and you get all the meat that you're gonna normally eat in a week in about an hour and a half. And it's super good. They have there's a lot of different chains that people like to go to that have things like gyudon, which is like a rice with like a teriyaki beef on top of it, and that's extremely good. Basically, any food you have in Japan is extremely good. Sushi is awesome. There's a lot of cheap sushi places where you'll get a little plate of sushi that has 2 pieces on it for about $1, and you can go through and you eat like probably 15 or so of them, and as you're giving them back the plates, there's usually like a little like game that will be going on, and so every 5 plates they'll show like a little video clip, and they'll say if you won or if you lost, and if you win, there'll be a little a toy that comes out of the machine, and you get like a little, like, I don't know what you call it, a little tassel type thing to put on your phone. And so sometimes you'll see missionaries who'll have like that little tassel on their phone. It's like, you had sushi earlier, didn't you? So, and the sushi in Japan is night and day different from the sushi that you'll ever have in America. So, or probably pretty much anywhere else. The sushi is incredible. I love the food in Japan. I could talk all day.
I personally don't like fish. I don't like sea creatures of most variety. So I knew this was going to be hard for me. And a lot of people, I mean, like, sushi's really in, everyone loves sushi. I don't like sushi. Like, I lived in Japan, I still don't like sushi. But it was just very foreign. Actually, a couple days ago, one of my friends, like a close family friend, family, whatever, the youngest brother just got called to Kobe, Japan. And so I took him to just some Japanese restaurant on Center Street, and like he was kind of complaining. He's like, why isn't this good? Like, why isn't this like Chinese food? Chinese got this down. I'm like, 1, like, yes, Chinese food is really good, but 2, like, actual Chinese food is not Panda Express. You know what I mean? But the thing about Japanese food is it's just, I don't know, they don't try to make it user-friendly. They're not trying to get all these, like, Americans to come over and eat their food. They're not trying to sell their food to America as much as, I don't know, maybe some other countries are. It's just, they know what they like, and it's very weird for us because they'll eat anything from the ocean and any part of the thing from the ocean. But they have really good food too. Like, I'm sure the other missionaries who came through here talking about Japan raved about the food, but they have some really weird stuff. And they also have some really good stuff. Like, their ramen is out of control good, which like sounds really dumb because like members would always be like, oh, sisters, what's your favorite food? I'd be like, ramen. They're like, of course it is. They're like, oh, because you're white. And like, the ramen was really good. They had this thing called Okonomiyaki, which is like cabbage pancakes. So it's just like batter with cabbage in it and meat and different things. And then they like fry it like a pancake, and that's really good. Their tempura is really good. I never had teriyaki once in Japan. I don't think that's a real Japanese thing. There are a lot of things that we claim are Japanese in America that I never ate in Japan. But they have really good tea, and there's like certain kinds of tea that you can drink, obviously. And Japanese people know which teas those are. Like, there are lists of which ones you can and can't drink, and which I appreciate because now that I'm back in America, I'm like, oh yeah, I can drink that one. Well, like, I hope I can still drink it. Maybe it's just like a Japan only rule. I don't know. But I don't know, the food's just really interesting. But they've got some really their bread is really good. Like, it's amazing. You go to these little dollar bakeries, and every little thing in the bakery is $1, and it's so good. I wish America had these little dollar bakeries with these amazing pastries, but it's okay. I got fat on my mission, so I don't really need it anymore.
Well, I didn't eat a ton of crazy foods, but one of the ones that I did eat, it's called basashi, and it's raw horse meat. And so in Japan, it didn't seem that weird just because you're eating raw fish and all sorts of raw things. But I tell people that I ate raw horse meat, and they're always really shocked. But it was really good. It's a delicacy at sushi restaurants. It's always a little bit more expensive than the fish, but it tasted great. I liked it a lot. But some of the other things that they have is you can get a license to prepare pufferfish, and I guess pufferfish have like poison parts in them where if you do it wrong, the whole meat could kill you. But yeah, they have certain restaurants, especially over in the Shizuoka area, over by Fuji, where they serve pufferfish. And I never had the chance to eat that, but someday I want to. Something that Nagoya is famous for is, I forget what it's called. Oh, it's called hitsumabushi, and it's just fried eel. And that was really good. I liked that a lot. Other than that, I don't know. If you don't like rice or if you don't like sushi, then I guess it could be rough. But nothing ever really like shocked me. There was nothing that was hard for me to eat, except I remember one. So they eat octopus in a lot of things. They'll put octopus in these takoyaki balls, which is just like dough with octopus in it, or in okonomiyaki, which is like, they're like pancakes with cabbage and whatever you really want in it. And so they put octopus in that, and it's always really chewy, and it kind of tastes like erasers, and I struggled to eat that. There's also something called umeboshi, which is, I think it's like pickled plum, and it's super sour, and they eat it just plain, and I could never do that. That was always hard for me. Something that a lot of missionaries would do to new missionaries to kind of like help them become accustomed to the culture, I guess, is they would have them eat something called natto, which is fermented soybeans. And Japanese people love it. They'll eat it for breakfast every day. They'll put like raw egg in it and stir it up with rice. And I don't know, it's not very good. The further along I got, the more I ate it. My MDC teacher told me that if you eat natto, if you eat a whole packet of natto, then your Japanese will become better. And so I remember my trainer, who was Japanese, he would eat it every morning. And one day I said, I'm going to eat it with you. And I did. I ate all of it, and it was hard, but it was great. I mean, I gained the experience, which was worth it, I think.
I ate a fish eyeball, which is not common for missionaries, but they had the whole head of the fish, and actually I got a part of its tooth stuck in my tooth, and that was just really weird. But like their favorite part is the eyeball, and usually like the dad gets to eat it, but they let me eat it. They didn't like make me, and it wasn't like they offered it so I had to accept it to be polite, but I asked kind of if I could eat it. And it was really interesting. It tasted really good. It was just kind of like a jelly-like substance, and the thought of it was gross, but it tasted good, so that was interesting. I also ate, we did most of our own cooking, but sometimes you go to members' houses, and I ate, I don't remember what it's called, but it's some kind of shell that has like a creature living in it. It's like a giant snail is kind of what it seemed like, sea snail, but different. And it was her first time ever making it, and she overcooked it, I guess. And so we were eating it, and I was chewing for like a good 3 minutes. Like if I, like, not exaggerating, I was probably chewing on it for like 3 minutes, and I could not swallow because it was just like rubber. It was just like rubber in my mouth, and I saved the shell. Like we had to pull it out of the shell, and it was like this weird, like, I don't know. And that too, like the first little bite that I had wasn't super bad, and it was fine. There was some sand in it, which was gross, like chewing on sand. But then I got to like the end, and it was like super bitter, and it was just like way too much, and I could not chew it. It was so rubbery. But she was so sweet. She would make us food like all the time, and we would teach her other weird things that I ate. Oh, natto is one that probably every missionary talks about. It's fermented soybeans. And the first time I had it was like, I didn't like it, but I didn't hate it. And the second time I had it, I kind of liked it. And then after that, I would buy it myself, and I really liked it. And like I'll still buy it at the Asian market sometimes. And I don't know, this is really interesting that most people wouldn't like, but.
So I love Japanese food, and everyone kind of made fun of me for how much I loved it, because I loved all the things that most foreigners like hate. So they have this paste, it's called anko, and it's like a red bean paste, and it's supposed to be like a dessert kind of thing, even though by American standards it's not sweet at all. But I loved it, and it ended up being like one of my favorite things. And I would talk to investigators and members and things, and they'd ask me what my favorite food was, and I would always say dorayaki. And it's like this red bean paste in between two pancakes. And it's so good, and I love it. And everyone made fun of me because they were like, you're just Japanese now. Like, that's just such a Japanese thing. But I really like that. So we ate a lot of curry. So like rice, and then with the curry on top of it, we ate a lot of that. It was really good. My companions, I always had a Japanese companion, so they would always eat lots of rice, lots of veggies. I was pretty lucky. You can find like normal things. So I would eat chicken, I would make myself hamburgers, I always had a ton of veggies, and like I would eat salads every day, which is really good. I was really paranoid about food. I had a lot of issues with food on my mission. So I always made sure that I was eating like good healthy food that would give me the energy that I need, but I would have like yogurt in the morning. Lots of normal things. There were only a couple of things that were really like super Japanese. The dorayaki was one of them with the anko. Curry is kind of Japanese. It's more Indian, but they ate a lot of it. And I really liked it. There were a couple of sushi places that we went to that were amazing, and that was like the first time that I had really eaten sushi, like real sushi. So we would have sashimi, which is like raw fish, and we had like raw salmon and like raw shrimp and all this kind of sushi, and it was so good, and I loved it. And this sushi place was the best because the way that it works, they would have booths, and then there would be like a wall that runs along the edge of the booth, and on the wall there's like an electric train. And what happens is you order your sushi from an iPad, and then it comes to you on the train. So the train will like come, stop at your table, and you push a button and send it back. And so it was just so creative and so fun, and it was such a fun way to like eat sushi. But the sushi was great. I had like some squid once, I think. I'm not a big squid person. I didn't like fish at all before my mission, but I finally got into like salmon and cod and like the milder kind of fish while I was there. Weirdest thing I ate was I ate horse, and I'm from Colorado, so I'm pretty sure that I had a lot of friends that like were really mad at me for it. But horse is really good. It was super good. It was like this horse burger, and it was just great. I loved it. It was like probably one of the best things that I ate on my mission. It's just super good. I don't know how to describe it. It's just really yummy. But it was, I was serving in an area called Kumamoto, and it's like the specialty of their area is they have horse that they eat there. It's really good. I'm trying to think of like other things. The way that they eat is almost as big as the food that they eat. And so they have like the low tables, and then you kneel and you eat at the table, and I always ate with chopsticks. I found that like eating the way that they eat was a way that I could embrace their culture, and the more that I embraced the culture, the more I loved those people. And so people would always make fun of me for like acting Japanese and being Japanese, but I really loved it, and it made me love them more. And so I would like eat things with chopsticks, and they would be like, we don't even eat that with chopsticks. Like, we'll eat that with a spoon, but you're weird and you're eating that with chopsticks. And I'm like, I love it. I just can't stop. So the food was definitely an adjustment, but overall I liked it a lot.
I love the Japanese people. They're such great people. I remember just being on the trains. They're pretty quiet. Nobody talks to each other. And you'll be in a train with a lot of people. You can be absolutely squished and nobody's saying anything to each other and they're just minding their own business. And I loved being able to, I'd be on the train and I'd talk to them and hearing about their life and really caring about them. They will open up and feel your love, which is really cool. And they have the best culture. They're so awesome. They're so polite. When they say no to you, they reject you with I'm okay, or sorry, I'm a little busy right now, or it's nothing too bad. And in America, I've heard a lot of different stories. So just really amazed with the way Japanese people handle themselves and present themselves. So one of the things actually that's interesting is that you'll hear, when you go to Japan, you hear a prophecy a lot. You hear the prophecies about Japan a lot. And one of the prophecies says that the hearts of the members will change. And it goes something like this, but it says the work in Japan will hasten. And the speaker says, at first I wasn't sure what that meant, and now I realize that it's not because all of a sudden the Japanese people will be more willing to listen, but because the hearts of the members are changed and they're more eager and willing to talk to their friends about the restored gospel. And that's something I feel like I was able to see a lot on my mission, is the hearts of the members being softened and changed to be able to share the gospel with those people around them and their friends. And I have to say that you cannot do anything without the members. That's something I learned too. You hear it all the time, but the members helped me so much, and being able to do missionary work with the members is an incredible experience. They have great faith. So I am a very picky eater, and I was really scared to go to Japan because all people asked when they heard I was going to Japan, they were like, "Oh, do you like fish and rice?" And I don't like either of those. I didn't like either of those. And I was really, really scared. Even the plain food, I was like, I'm not sure what this is. It might be a little... I didn't know. I was way scared. So I showed up in Japan, and at first I was reluctant to eat anything, and then you get hungry and you discover that you love the food. The food is so good, and I love rice. I absolutely love rice, and I will eat almost anything with rice. And there's very few things that I don't enjoy. And even when I go out for sushi, I didn't like sushi, and I will eat sushi, but I always get the shrimp tempura, and it's really good, so I'm a pretty happy camper. But the food's great.
At first, I did not like it, but now I just wish I could eat it again. The sushi is so good, and they have it for so cheap. They have these places called Sushi Roll that you go to, and it just comes by on little trains sometimes, and you can just grab some sushi. It is the best. It really is. They eat rice, and they eat a lot of eggs and mayonnaise, but it's special Japanese mayonnaise, so it doesn't necessarily taste like American mayonnaise. They eat a lot of vegetables. I don't know if they have a typical thing, and bread.
I love Japanese food. I mean, it's not just hydrated or dehydrated noodles and sushi all the time. It's so many more, and I could probably take about an hour talking about all the food. Probably get really bored, but what I love about Japanese food is that it really uses everything they have around them. Because Japan is a very mountainous island. It's not super fertile in the sense that there's not a whole lot of places to plant stuff. So what they use is what they got. They don't use too many extravagant things that may not be common. They use very common things in their food. But of course, sushi is amazing. And ramen is just a totally another story when you go to Japan. It's not none of this heat up in the microwave kind of thing. It's fresh made noodles with fresh broth. So good. And Sapporo has miso ramen, which is the best ramen there is, in my opinion. I can't really explain what miso is in English. It's just miso. It's kind of soybean. Anyway, but other things that they have there, what's unique with maybe talk about ramen again. What's unique with Sapporo ramen is that they add corn and butter, which is not a normal ingredient to in other ramen in Japan. So a lot of tourists from around Japan will go to Sapporo and they have to have corn and butter in it because that's what Sapporo does. Also, I talked about this, but squid. There's a lot of squid, especially in the lower areas, and they use that a lot. Very good. I love squid. It's chewy, but not as chewy as octopus. I mean, you got the classic things that missionaries cook. You have curry, yakisoba, which is like stir-fried noodles, mabodofu, which is a Chinese tofu dish, fried rice, trying to think what else. Gyozas. Oh, I love gyoza. Like pot stickers. What else did we cook? We cooked a lot, actually. At least when, if you were my companion, it would have cooked a lot. I think those are like the main ingredients or main dishes we cooked, because they were simple but very, very good, and I really enjoyed them. Whenever you go to a member's house, which I'll be honest is not often, but when it does happen, they treat you like kings. I remember one member, they just had all this sashimi all over the place. And sashimi is like sushi, except just without the rice. It's all over the place, and just missionaries are like, go for it, just eat as much as you can, and we took them up on that. But what also got me is when you have members who they weren't really planning on having missionaries, but the missionaries had to be there. Like, oh, come in, we'll feed you. And then you get to experience what a real Japanese home is. Not like how most members do. They have to have an amazing meal for the elders, but they weren't expecting it, so it's just a normal Japanese dinner. And you'd have things like, you have curry, but you also have just straight up fried fish, not battered, but just grilled or just fried. And it's just so interesting to experience that, because I would never experience that before. I don't really tend to eat fish heads all the time, but hey, those eyeballs, they're pretty good. I've heard they're the best part, like the healthiest part, so I don't know if that's true, but I also have miso soup, soybeans, but those are probably my favorite. Now, food that is kind of bad, this thing called natto. Natto is fermented soybeans, and I don't know who thought of it. I feel like someone left the soybeans outside for a few weeks and they remembered it, and then they took it out, just kind of played with it. Oh, seems legit. Just ate it. This is great. We should put it on rice and toast. Put a raw egg on it. Be great. I don't mind it. I can eat it. The smell is horrible. It's just throwing like a dirty diaper in a dumpster, leaving there for a few weeks, and then coming back. Yeah, it's basically how it smells, but it doesn't taste too bad. I don't know who would have thought smelling that and I'll put that in my mouth. Oyakodon. This is a good dish, not a bad dish. Oyakodon is where you take egg and chicken and you cook it in like a soy sauce kind of broth and you put it over rice. It literally means parent meets child in a bowl. So I love that. But it's really good. It's really easy to make. If you ever want some, just come by my place. I'll make it for you. But it's really good. some of the candy they have there. This thing called Black Thunder. Black Thunder is worth more than gold. It's only well, it's not that expensive. It's only 32 cents comparatively. But it is so good. You could get someone in Japan to do anything with Black Thunder. It's like, will you listen to our message? Nah. Will you do it for a Black Thunder? Maybe. We do it for 2? Yes. But it's so good. Love Black. Imagine taking a Oreo cookie, crumbling it up, and then spreading amazing chocolate on it, and you have a chocolate bar. Then eating it, then going to heaven. That's Black Thunder. It's super good, and they're supposed to be bringing it to America, so be excited for that. Of course, you have Haichu. That's really common candy. You have Pocky, which is the pencil-covered chocolate sticks. Yeah, you have those. But you also have amazing bread. Like, they like their bread, but not wheat. It's all sweet bread. So there's one called melon pan. I don't know why they call it melon pan, because I guess it's supposed to taste like a melon, but it just tastes like sweet, really sweet bread. It's really good. You also have ampan. Ampan is bread with a filling, and this filling is red bean paste, anko, and it's sweet beans. So it's not like, don't think like kidney beans or anything like that. It's very sweet. A lot of Americans or foreigners don't really like it. They think it's gross. I really do. It's really good. You have to give it a chance. Oh man, now I'm getting hungry. Drinks, you have CC Lemon, which supposedly has 70 lemons worth of vitamin C in it, supposedly. Mitsuya Cider, which is kind of like a Sprite drink. It's really good. Aquarius, it's the Japanese Gatorade, but it doesn't taste like Gatorade. It's just a sports drink. Oh man, there's so many good things. But I'll leave it there for you to find out. You'll find out.
As I mentioned before, I don't like seafood at all. They put seaweed in virtually everything. Yeah. A lot of missionaries went in not liking seaweed, but and then they ended up loving it. Unfortunately, I was not one of those people. I still didn't like it. But they have, so there are a couple things that you learn to love there. My favorite was onigiri. It's like this rice pack ball. Their rice is delicious, by the way. It's like so amazingly good. It's in a triangle, and then they stuff some sort of meat in it. And I like the tuna. It's a very traditional and one, or very like mild tasting one. And it'd be wrapped in seaweed. But that's something that you can easily take the seaweed off, and that's what I would do. And those are good quick lunches. Some of my favorite meals were yakiniku. Was delicious. It's like this. Basically what they do is they take a lot of members when they have you over, sometimes they'll have this, but they take a bunch of cut up vegetables. They love their vegetables there. They'll take like eggplant, cabbage, carrots, onions, just anything. And then they'll get a bunch of meat, different types of meat, and they will just throw it onto this huge frying pan like in front of you. And you just, when it's cooked, you flip it over with your chopsticks, and then you just take it and you dip it into, they have like this sauce, and you dip it into a bowl and then you eat it, and it's so good. It is so good. And so there are things that if you don't like seaweed, that's good. The one that I would personally stray away from is natto. It is fermented soybeans. There are some Japanese who don't even like it. And another traditional meal, they have it all the time during the winter, is called nabe. It's kind of like our pot roast. It's like a soup kind of thing, but they just, in a broth, they boil meats and vegetables. There are different flavors of it. Some are seaweed, more fishy, more tasting. Some are more meat tasting. But nabe is really good. They just have like this specific pot that they put it in, and then it's over a fire on the table, and it's really good. And then there's of course ramen and udon, which is, it's like a thicker noodle. It's made of buckwheat. The look of it, I guess not the look. Sometimes the look of it can throw you off, and the texture of it can throw you off really good. But it's like my favorite thing. I love that. Anything that didn't have seaweed in it, I usually really liked. The desserts are not sweet. I mean, there's a reason they're skinny, right? It's because they don't put sugar in things. Their chocolate's good, but it takes a little bit to get used to because it's not as sweet. They do make desserts. Their ice cream's really good. Their ice cream's really good. Their chocolate's good. Some places, like when they make desserts, they'll make cakes and pies. When they make them, they're really good, but they aren't as sweet as Americans are, like as our stuff is, which is good. It's fine. But yeah, it's not as sweet, and they don't eat them as often. They have mochi all the time.
I love them.
I did not like mochi.
Really?
Yeah, the texture and the taste of it, and then they put this anko. Oh, it's a sweet red bean paste in the middle of it, which I did not like. For me, beans are more of like savory, not sweet. But a lot of missionaries really end up liking it. They have an entire like holiday reserved for mochi, where you make mochi and you eat it. They put it in a soup, and when you put it in a soup, it like kind of melts and it gets super stringy, and then you kind of chew on it forever. I mean, it's just pounded rice. And I love rice, but for some reason I didn't like mochi. They put it around their ice cream, and it's really good that way.
It's so yummy. I love all of it. But it's funny because before my mission, like, I did not like fish or sushi or any seafood. But my taste buds like took a 180, so that was good. But I really like trying lots of things. Like my companions and I, we would go to the grocery store on preparation day, and we'd like pick one really weird looking thing for the other person to have to eat. So we ended up eating some weird things that way, but also really delicious things that just looked weird but were great. But I really like all of the food, and just would recommend trying new things and keeping an open mind, because you never know. It took me like 3 tries to like sushi, but by the end of it, by the 3rd time I really loved it. So I love mochi. It's like squishy rice cake, and you eat it with onko, which is red bean paste. It sounds gross, but it's delicious. Takoyaki, which is like a little pancake ball with octopus in it, with little fish flakes and seaweed and some mayonnaise on top. I like Okonomiyaki, which is like a cabbage pancake with some more of the same stuff. Or kabocha, which is pumpkin, that's yummy. Udon, it's like really thick ramen, and you have like shrimp tempura with it. That's good. Yeah, it's all good stuff. Taco is not... They're not tacos. That's octopus. Lesson 1 of the food learning list. But one time, this was 10th transfer, so I had my fill of interesting things, but this was by far like the most interesting. We were at a restaurant, really fancy seafood restaurant, with a member and an investigator, and I was playing with her baby, and my companion was sitting at the table, so I came back, and our food was sitting on, like, in plates, and it just looked like a bowl of, like, purple furry tongues, and then a plate of, like, a brain or a digestive system, just all put on the plate. And I, like, looked at her, and I was like, "What are we eating?" And she was like, "You don't want to know." So I just decided it was gonna be one of those lunches where we drink a lot of water. And I ate it all, and it ended up being, she told me on the bus ride home, it was octopus eggs, was the furry tongue looking thing, and it just like crumbled in our mouth. And then I think the other thing was a fish's digestive system that we just swallowed whole, like
and it was like 5 courses of like different variations of octopus and fish, but it was good.
I love sushi. I love okonomiyaki. So have you heard of okonomiyaki? It's like basically this like pancake, like they have like 2 types. There's like the thick kind, and there's like the really thin kind that they had in my first area. So the thin kind's so good. Like you put like thin thing of like basically pancake batter. Then you've got like cabbage, vegetables, like these noodles that they put in it, and meat. And then you put like basically like brown sugar sauce, like soy sauce, brown sugar sauce with like mayonnaise on top of it, and like onions and stuff. It's so good. And I don't know, there's just so much good food in Japan, but there's some crazy stuff too. Like there's called natto. It's like fermented beans, and it's basically like eating like, it's the consistency of boogers and mucus, I would say. Yeah, I got fed that like my first Sunday. It was way hard to eat it. There is lots of pickled stuff that they eat, which can be good. Some of it's pretty strong tasting. But I like Japanese food, but I don't like some of the extreme varieties. But that's okay. And then I also like, they eat a lot of raw egg, and that's actually pretty good. Like you put raw egg over like rice and stuff, it's pretty good. And then there's everyone's favorite ramen. Like ramen is a totally different concept in Japan than it is in America. Like even the freeze-dried ramen that you get in the packet, it's so good in Japan, and it's terrible here. It's like a disgrace. Like super thick, super good. One time I had this fish that was filled in with fish eggs, and it was like dried and then deep fried. That was pretty gross. I think it was an investigator that fed it to us, and I think she fed it to us like to kind of gross us out, like big time, because like I ate it, but like the head was still on the fish, and like it was basically just skinned, and so everything on it was there, and so I didn't know if I was eating like the like the whole fish, like with the bones still in it, and then I realized that it was just the eggs, which is just as bad. I've ate raw horse meat, but that's pretty good actually. Raw horse meat is way good. That's like a delicacy there. I had fish guts. You gotta stay clear of some of the crazy stuff unless you really just want to try it for once to say you tried it and then never eat it again. And there's like the really good stuff that you'll want to eat like every day. So.
Okay, so when I first tried the food in Japan, I mean, it's not as sweet and salty as American food, so I was like, this doesn't really have any flavor. And my first, few transfers, I actually carried around a little bag in my purse because I wouldn't be able to eat the food, and so I just then put it in, and because I didn't want to offend them, and so yeah, it just that saved me. That got me through to the point where I loved Japanese food. I really liked okonomiyaki, which is kind of like a cabbage pancake with meat on it, and there's different sauces, and I love sushi and the sashimi and stuff, but to be honest, when I first tried it, I absolutely hated it, and because it's just raw fish. And so one of my companions, she was from Brazil, and she didn't like fish and she wouldn't eat it, and so we went to a member's house, and there's just this huge plate of sashimi, which is the raw fish, and my companion turned to me and she said, "Dozo," which means go ahead, and I was like, "What, you're not eating it?" And she said, "No, I won't eat it." And so I had to eat it all by myself. And I mean, with every bite, I was just like, oh no. But after that, I loved sushi and all of that stuff. So, yeah, Japanese food is so good. And usually missionaries just grow to love it. And there's lots of, really yummy foods that you can eat there. Japanese people are so polite, and so you always want to show honor and respect to them when you enter into their house. And before every meal, you always go like this, and you say "itadakimasu," which means like I humbly partake of this meal. And a couple of mannerisms that I wish that I would have known before I went is that you do not stick your chopsticks into the rice because that's like cursing their house and their family and stuff. And so I did that, and my trainer about had a heart attack because it's very offensive. And then another thing is that you never want to go and touch their chopsticks, because they're their own personal chopsticks. And it's kind of, I guess it's kind of rude, but my companion, she kind of had a heart attack about that too, and I didn't know. So yeah, always use your own chopsticks. And another thing is that Japanese people, they slurp when they drink their soup. And so when I first got there, that shocked me and I was just mortified. But it's actually showing that it's really delicious and that it tastes good. And so, you know, if you ever go to a soup shop or are at a member's house, they'll always be slurping if they eat something like that. So if you can learn to slurp, then the members will love it.
Food is awesome. I love Japanese food. There is so much just like things that you wouldn't think that are like super Japanese, but like are just like normal food. Over there they have like udon, which is like a bowl of rice, and then they have like meat and stuff on the top, and it's super good. And like yakisoba and just different kinds of like noodles, like ramen and like udon, and like they're kind of like fat noodles. And so most of it like was super good. Like sushi was super good. I loved the sushi. They eat sashimi, which is just like the chunks of like raw fish, and even that's like pretty good. We did eat some weird things. There's some stuff that I didn't like very much. There's like, so I like octopus, but I don't really like squid. Squid wasn't so good. So they have natto, which is like fermented soybeans, and it's like a really like stringy, gross texture, and it smells really bad, but they love it, and so they eat it. And I had companions who'd eat it like for breakfast every morning, and like waking up and like smelling it was gross. And they have mochi, which is like pounded, it's like special rice that's been boiled, and then they like pound it, and it like makes this really sticky, like gooey, I don't even know how to explain it, but it's good. They eat that with a lot of things. One time we had an investigator that gave us senbei, which is like a rice cracker, and it was like this big, but then in the middle of it there's like a fish that was like this big, and it had just been pressed to like the rice cracker, and like nothing had been done to it. It's just like this whole fish, and it was just like dried and slapped on it. And she gave it to us, and so we took it home, and we're like, well, we have to try it because she gave it to us. And so my companion and I both took one and like bit the head off and like ate the part with the head, and it was so bad. It was awful. And then, you know, but of course, like, I don't know, you eat it and you're grateful. But there's like so many times when members would like give us something, and you just look at it and be like, I'll eat it and then ask after what it is, because I don't know if I want to know what I'm eating right now. But most of the food was so good. I love the food. There's so many things that I loved. One thing that I really loved a lot, it's called Okonomiyaki. And I was in Hiroshima, and so in Hiroshima they have like a special kind of okonomiyaki, and it's like soba, yakisoba, like these little noodles. It's kind of like chow mein, I guess, but a little different. Noodles, and they put like a batter underneath it, so it's like kind of like a crepe, and then noodles, and then like more batter, and they put like bacon and like cheese and like a ton of cabbage and like other like vegetables and things like that. And then you put like mayonnaise and this special sauce on top of it, and like little seaweed flakes, and like it's so good though. It's delicious. We had a member that would make that for us all the time, and it was the best thing ever. It was so good.
I love Japanese food. It's so good. I don't know. I've never felt as balanced as I did when I ate food in Japan. There's a lot of vegetables, a lot of rice. Not as much meat just because it's so expensive, and not as much dairy or cheese because that's also really expensive. But I guess a typical meal for a missionary, we did most of our cooking at home. We would eat at members' houses every so often, but it wasn't a very consistent thing. So we would you wake up in the morning and you put rice in the rice maker, and then you just decide what you're going to eat with your rice, because rice is just an everyday part of life. And so we would eat a lot of just like vegetable stir-fry things. Something else we ate a lot of was just like kind of fried chicken with lettuce. I don't know, that was really good, I thought. We ate a lot of curry, which isn't like the Indian curry that you might have eaten before. It's just kind of chopped up vegetables in this sauce that tastes a little bit different than Indian curry. And I really liked this stuff called mabo tofu. It's just like ground beef with tofu in kind of like a spicy sauce. I'm pretty sure it's Chinese, not Japanese, but it was really good. But the foods that I remember are the foods that we would eat at members' houses or when we went out to eat. The one that I miss the most is sushi, because I just feel like once you go to Japan and you eat sushi there for cheap and in large amounts, then you come back here and it's just not the same. I've been trying to find good sushi places, but in Japan they have sushi places all over the place, and they have these really cheap ones where it's like $1 for a plate, and they come around on conveyor belts. So that was one of my favorite places to go. They also have these yakiniku places, which is just like, it's just meat, barbecued meat. They bring out the raw meat and then you barbecue it in front of you, in front of yourself. And yeah, that's really good. One of my favorite dishes was called tonkatsu, and it's just pork it's battered in breadcrumbs and fried in oil. And you just have that on top of cabbage with rice on the side. And that's really good too. With every meal, you're going to eat miso soup. And most of the time, depending on the restaurant, they'll have either green tea, which you can't drink, or they'll have mugicha, which is barley tea, which you can't drink. Or they'll have water if you ask for it. But yeah, I remember mugicha. The members drink it a lot because it's one of the few teas that is okay to drink. And the first time I tasted it, I hated it. It just kind of tastes like dirt, or I heard some missionaries describe it as like cigarette water, which I know sounds terrible, but the more I drank it, the more I learned to love it. And now you can buy it at Asian markets and it's really cheap. So I buy it pretty regularly and I love it now, even though I didn't love it at first. So they have kind of what we would call Japanese McDonald's, which is called sukiya, and there they just have rice with meat, and you can get like cheese or vegetables or mayonnaise or anything like that on top of that. That was one of my favorite places to go when we didn't have as much money. Something just in general about Japanese food is they definitely don't put as much sugar in their desserts or in even their everyday products, which is actually great. Like, I got really used to it. And so we would go to one time we went to the mission president's house for a meeting, and my mission president's wife had made French toast with buttermilk syrup. And I remember I ate it that day and I had a headache like the whole day because there was so much sugar in it. And that's when I knew that I'd become used to the Japanese food and their desserts. Unfortunately, I've probably like gone back to my sugar consumption, but it was nice. Yeah, so there's one more. It's called shabu shabu, and it's kind of like fondue, but yeah, they bring out raw meat or vegetables and you just cook it in this water. Maybe it's oil, I'm not sure. But you cook it in that, and then they have sauces for it, and that one was really good too.
Moral of the story, the food was unbelievable. Like, I remember coming back to America and being so unsatisfied with almost everything that I ate. I've sort of gotten used to it now. The flavors here are much louder. Like, they just fill it with salt, and they fill it with MSG, and they just make the flavor sort of explode more to make it appealing. I don't know if it's really appealing, but it does sort of satisfy something in Americans that we want, you know? But the flavors there were much more calm, and they were just rich, you know? And I really came to appreciate it, and as a result, even now, like, they'll give me some food and they'll say, it's a little bland, you might want to add some salt. And every time I'm just like, I probably don't want to add some salt. And I'll eat it and I'm like, I would not be any happier with this, with salt in it. Because the flavor of the vegetables and the meat or whatever you put in it is there. Just because you want to enhance it with this artificial enhancement of salt doesn't mean I want to. Because I was used to these more subdued flavors that teach you to appreciate what you're actually eating. You know what I mean? And I could go off on that for a while. I feel like that's a cultural difference that is a problem in America that Japan is advantageous with. But yeah, there's definitely an overall distinction in that way. Even the candy, you know, it wasn't as in your face. It wasn't as sugary. It wasn't as powerful. But it was there was a taste there, and it was really good. You've probably had haichu. That's Japanese candy. And that's probably one of the more powerful ones flavor wise. It's not as tasty here as it is there. I think that it always tastes stale when I get it here, in my opinion. But that was probably the thing that, in terms of generally all the food, sticks out. It was just it was more focused on the actual flavor of the food you're eating instead of the salt and the different things you put on top of it. You know what I mean? And I came to really appreciate that, and I still appreciate that. I'm in a dinner group, and probably every time I make food, I think everyone's kind of like, this is a little subdued, you know what I mean? But I am just scarfing it down because I love it. But I think they also learn to appreciate kind of the way it tastes compared to the loud food we're used to in America, the sort of like instant spike of flavor in your mouth. And that's what I became used to, and I really like it. One of my favorite things was katsu. I mean, Americans say katsu kind of strongly. You can find that at like kind of islander type restaurants here. We would just say kats, like chicken kats, pork kats, tonkatsu, like different things like that. Really tasty. It's sort of like a way of breading chicken or pork that's really juicy and tender, very good. We had a famous restaurant in our mission called Hamakats. I think Island Kats is the idea there, is the name of the restaurant. And it was just really good. I asked other Japanese missionaries before if they've heard of that, and they know what Kats is, but they would never say like, "Oh yeah, we had this restaurant." They don't know about it. It's kind of in our region. Really tasty. It's the one that the mission president takes you out to the first meal kind of thing there, and the last meal as well. So that kind of obviously sticks out.
The one thing that I will never ever get sick of is raw red tuna. You can get it in pretty much any sushi bar. You can get there's a lot of cheap conveyor belt sushi bars where you only pay like $1 per plate, so you can have a meal for $9 or $10 really easily, which is great, and it's fresh. But you can also get, and so sushi, it would be like a little ball of rice with the red tuna laid on top, and it's not anything like canned tuna. It's like a completely different animal. It's so good. You can also get it. So, and then there's sashimi, which would just be the fish, and I can eat it like that all day. It's my favorite thing in the world. There's this dish called sukiyaki. It's beef, and when Japanese people eat beef, they don't really eat steaks. They cut it very, very thin, and you cook it on a grill, and then you dip it in raw egg, and you won't have just the beef. There'll be other vegetables, and you dip it in raw egg, and then eat it, and it's really, really good.